presentation. So our third speaker is Dr. Annette Klosa, okay, from Leibniz Institute of German Language, Germany, who is a specialist of German Neologism and lexicography. Dr. Annette will present her paper on German corona-related neologism and their lexicographical representation in English language. And Professor Kim Kyung from Busan National University will carry out the discussion. Unfortunately, today, Professor Kim Kyung was not able to participate personally due to some important reason. However, Professor Kim has sent her discussion note in recording video. So we will play that video. After that, at the end of discussion, we will open the floor for general audience. Many people are waiting to hear your presentation, and especially from the linguistic part, many students in our university are willing to learn a lots of things from the aspect of theoretical part, or like the logical part. They want to learn a lots of things from your idea of neologism. So we want to ask you to begin your presentation. Please go on.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the organizers for inviting me to this conference. And I really wish I could be with you in Korea, but maybe another time. And now I'm happy to be joining you online, and I'm very sorry that I missed all the other talks due to the time zone differences. And it's really nice that you reminded me of joining, because in my agenda it was 10 o'clock, but now we shifted back to winter time. So it's 9 o'clock. So I was really happy for your last minute notice, or I would have missed my own talk. But let's begin. I'll present some ideas on German corona-related neologisms and how we deal with them in our lexicographic work. There's a short outline of what I plan to do. First of all, I give some information on how the vocabulary reacts to times of crisis, not only right now, but it usually does that. Then I will also inform you on some ways of how people in Germany reacted to this in publishing glossaries, word lists, dictionaries, and so on. And then I will focus on our own dictionary, which is a dictionary of neologisms. And then I will conclude with some ideas for future work. And then I'm very happy to join discussing my thoughts. Let's start with some ideas on how the vocabulary reacts to things that happen in the world. This is not the first time that we can notice that some specific event leads to the formation of neologisms. When you think of the German reunification in 1989 and 90, which was a very important historical event for Germany, then you will probably have the same idea that there are some things that need to be denoted, that there need to be some new words. And here are some examples taken from a dictionary which deals with a specific vocabulary. All the words that you see here denote the people either coming from the former German Democratic Republic, East Germany, or the old federal Republic of Germany, the West. And so there are quite a number of words like Ossi and Wessi, or Ostler and Westler, referring to people coming either from the eastern or the western parts. And while we started to use those words at that time in 1989 and 90, we still use some of them because we still refer to people from the east or the west. There are no equivalents, interestingly enough, for people from North or South Germany. Another important event, and this is a global event, was the financial crisis in the 2000s. And of course, this has also left some traces in our own vocabulary. You see here the example of bad bank, a loan word from English, which you might have as well. But there are also quite a number of words that were formed in German, referring, for example, to rescue or support measures like Rettungsschirm or Schutzschirm. And the screenshot that I show here is taken from our online dictionary of neologisms, where you can search for words in subject groups. Here, this is the subject group of banking and finance. And you can also see that we present all the words that belong to one of the subject groups according to their decade, the 1990s or the 2010s. And we will have to add another column soon for the 2020 words, of course. And this is an interesting facility of our dictionary, which helps users to search for words that belong to a subject area or specific theme. Why do we have this expansion of vocabulary? You have already seen that there are some events in time that lead us to form new words, but we also see that the usage frequency of other words changes dramatically. There might be specialized words or terminology that move into the general language, and we have seen that a lot around the corona pandemic. All of us have become sort of epidemiologists using specific terms taken from that specific part of language, but also general language words are suddenly used significantly more often than before. In German, for example, people started to buy toilet paper in very huge amounts before the first shutdown, what we call shutdown. And so the word for toilet paper, the German word for toilet paper, suddenly was used in the press and the media in very high frequency because people discussed in the press why this happened. And so
sorry, Annette.
Yes?
I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but actually we cannot see the slideshow.
Okay.
It's stuck at the first slide.
It's stuck? Okay.
Yes.
Well, then I'll stop it and I'll restart it. And then we hope, because for me it moved on, but for you it didn't.
No, for us, no, it didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's good that you're interrupting because, you know, you should be able to follow the screen.
Yes.
Because all the material is on there. So let's try again. Let's see. I hope it works now.
Yes, now it is on the 4th slide.
Okay, so you haven't seen those slides at all with all the, okay. So you only saw this?
We only saw the first slide.
Okay.
First slide only.
Okay, so this was the outline, which you hopefully remember. These were the examples for the German reunification with Ossi and Wessi. I've talked about that. These were the words from the financial crisis, bad bank, and this is the screenshot that I described, which you now can finally see. And this
Sorry, Annette, we can still not see the different slides. It's stuck on the 4th now, and it's not in presentation mode. Maybe you should do it from your Zoom itself.
Yep. I did it. I mean, this is the only way I knew how to do it. I started the presentation mode and then I shared my screen. I'll try again. Okay, let's see. Do you see something now?
Yes, now we move to the, in the full slide. Now it is.
Yes?
Yes, now it is moving. Now it is moving.
Okay, well, This is the 3rd time I did exactly the same thing, but this time it works. Wonderful. So now I can move on, and I hope that you can follow what I'm saying better now that you see the slides. Okay, the neologisms that come into German, which can either be new words or new phrases or new meanings for existing older words, are sometimes borrowings from other languages, mostly from English. But the bulk really is newly formed in German with German word material itself. But we also consider that terms that come from specific parts of the language and which move into the general language, those we also consider to be neologisms. Why do we have new vocabulary? Well, because there are new things that we need to talk about. Communication has to be enabled if something arises in the world around us, but also, especially for writers in the media context, we have the need to vary the expressions. This is why we have lots and lots of synonyms denoting the same thing that come up in new vocabulary, and I'll show examples to you later. Please bear in mind that new vocabulary includes either words that only have a very short lifespan, maybe only a couple of days or weeks or months, And then there are those that become established part of the German lexicon in the long term. And then also we have some new words that are very rarely used, maybe even only once. And then we have others that are used in a very, very high frequency. And so all of this poses different problems to us as lexicographers, because we have to consider how to deal with these differences. In our definition, neologisms are lexical units that come up or emerge in a language community in a specific period of time in that language development. And then it's really important that they diffuse, that they are not used only in a specific group of speakers, but throughout the language community. And this language community then accepts this word as, according to the language norms, it is a generally accepted part of the lexicon. In the beginning, some speakers may still feel that this is a new word, but then later on, this feeling of newness, if you can say so, gets lost. There are some indicators where we can see that the word is actually accepted into the lexicon. First of all, its overall increasing frequency, but then also it is distributed into many different text types and genres. It is not restricted in its use anymore. And then, of course, it should also be used in different discourses, in different topics, something like that. There are also some indicators for the process of the lexicalization of a new word. For example, pragmatic criteria. In the beginning, in German, we tend to mark that this is a new word. We put it into quotation marks. We use hedge words like so-called, or distancing phrases, or you will find something in the text where the new word appears that people say, I'm using a new word, or a definition follows after the new word where somebody explains what this means. And then later on, these are not used anymore. There are also grammatical criteria. For example, in German, we have 3 genders for nouns, female, male, and neuter. And in the beginning of the acceptance of borrowings into German, this might vary. You can have some nouns that have 3 genders in the beginning, and then after some time, the language community decides on which gender should be used, and then in the end, you have only 1 gender. Or for example, verbs, when they come into existence, sometimes only have the infinitive form or the past participle, and then after some time of usage, a full conjugational paradigm for this new verb is established, and then we would not feel this verb to be new anymore. And then there is word formation, which is a big issue in German. We are, I guess, a bit famous for liking to form new words. And then when a neologism is used as a first or second component in compounds, or if it's a borrowed new word which is combined with indigenous material, then we can see that this word indeed has come to be part of the German lexicon. It's an established word in German. Let's move to the next topic, and I'll show some examples to you how people in Germany at least reacted to this new vocabulary that they noticed quite suddenly and very conspicuously in March 2020, and then most of all April and the following month in Germany. There were very many newspapers and magazines that published glossaries. Here is an example from the Süddeutsche Zeitung, published in Bavaria. And this is sort of a combination between terminology and general language words, and all of them are explained in full sentences with lots of encyclopedic information, and other journalists did the same or similar things. We have a whole collection of these glossaries in Germany. Some of them have been worked on continuously, some of them have only been published once, and they're still there, the same as they were when they were first published. There's also some terminology that was published in glossaries. Here, an example from the Medical University of Hanover. This is a monolingual glossary, and you can easily see that these are terms, even if I don't translate them now, but they are explained to lay people. They are not explained to medical people, but to lay people. There are also multilingual terminological glossaries, and this is a screenshot from the terminological database that our Federal Language Bureau published. And this is quite interesting if you're interested in translation studies, because not always do we have equivalents in all the other languages to what we have in German. And it's not easy to translate then, but it's more an explanation then of the German way of describing things. And of course, user-driven dictionaries like the German Wiktionary have reacted. This is a screenshot from the Wiktionary wish list, and all those words in red that are shown here are not yet part of the German Wiktionary, but users feel the necessity of these words to be included. And this is, of course, work in progress. There are still many new Corona words added in the German Wiktionary. Then there are glossaries that General Language Dictionaries published. This is a screenshot from a dictionary, a German Contemporary Dictionary published by the Berlin Academy of Sciences. And you can see that there are some terms like vaccine, but also general language words in here. And all of them are included in a specific thematic glossary. And then when you click on one of the entries, you can open the full entry. Here is an example for Corona party, which I guess I need to explain. This is a party that people had, even though they were not allowed to have a meeting, you know, with more than 2 people or people outside the family. This is a phenomenon that happened in Germany, and I think it still happens at some places. Even now they are used for people who want to get infected because they don't want to get a vaccination. So they meet with others on purpose. Anyway, this is the entry on Corona party from this specific dictionary. And the word here is treated just like any other word. There is no indication that this is indeed a neologism. It is just explained lexicographically like any other older word. Some entries in general language dictionaries had to be revised. This is an example from the Duden Publishing House online dictionary. This is the entry on coronavirus. And the editorial team of Duden added some new phrases that show the specific context that we are living in now, because indeed the entry itself is older, as is the word coronavirus in German. And also we noticed that some outer texts were published. This is an example from Duden, where they discuss the difference between epidemic and pandemic, because many users of German asked questions like that. What's the difference? How do we use these words? Or for example, is it das or der coronavirus? There is a gender variation here for virus, and things like that. So dictionaries picked up on that and published text like the one shown here to their users to help them with adapting linguistically to the new situation. But now I'd like to show what we did for our neologism dictionary at IDS, at our institute. First of all, I'd like to explain what a neologism dictionary is, and I show here a definition from Barnhart and Barnhart, and that's still true. This is a specialized dictionary which only describes neologisms from a specific period of time, and it usually describes those words as new and not like a general language dictionary would do. For example, a neologism dictionary would date the word according to when it came into existence, maybe give some information on the variation grammatically, orthographically, and things like that, that you would not have in a general language dictionary. There are some that record words at their what I call moment of birth, and the screenshot here is an example for a German online dictionary that does that. This dictionary, Wortwarte, collects new words, describes them after like 2 or 3 weeks, puts some information online, and they do not follow up whether these words will still survive after some time. It's not what they want to do. They want to describe new words at their moment of emergence. And we do it at Neologismen Wörterbuch completely differently. We wait some time and we only describe words after some time of retrospection, when we see this word has indeed survived and has become part of the lexicon. Usually 2 to 3 or even 4 to 5 years will pass before we publish a word in our dictionary, a new word. The Neologismen Wörterbuch focuses on 3 decades, and now we're working on the 4th decade of the 2020s. And online, we add new entries continuously every month. In fact, we have a new release with new entries. And all of this is part of a dictionary portal at IDS. You see the screenshot here. And the interesting thing is that all those dictionaries in the portal are interlinked. So from our entries, there are links to others, for example, on loanword and things like that. We have entries on single words, we have multi-word expressions, we have new elements of word formation and new meanings, which I personally find most interesting. Here's the example, texten, in English to text. There is a new meaning, and that is described as being established in the 2000s. Here I show some numbers to you so that you have an impression of what we talk about. All in all, we have almost 2,400 entries now, and most of those come from the 1990s, but this is only because we're still working on the 2000 and the 2010s. You see that the bulk are indeed new lexemes, while phrases, new meanings, etc. are very less frequent. But I would also like to draw your attention that a lot of more words, over 6,000 in fact, are included in the dictionary and can be found by users because there are, for example, synonyms given in the other entries. In April 2020, we started to publish the glossary on new vocabulary around the corona pandemic. And here I show an entry on one of the names of the virus variants. This is what it looks like. It's just a list. And then if you click on one of the entries, you will have a short paraphrase and one example, and also the time where we put it into the dictionary. How do we find candidates for this? There's, of course, corpus-based work being done. We have a semi-automatic retrieval of neologism candidates in our German reference corpus. That's the same method that we always use for all neologisms. For the corona words, we also use a new tool at IDS, the COVID Plus viewer. And in this tool, RSS feeds of online news magazines are crawled, and then we can find on a weekly basis new candidates for our dictionary. We also collect candidates through press reading. We browse Twitter trends continuously and things like that. So that's important as well, because we are sometimes quicker on our own before the corpus data catches up. But then it's good to have the support of the corpus data and find that what we saw on our own is indeed a candidate. And last but not least, but very importantly, there are more and more suggestions by dictionary users. We have an online form, and people use that to send information to us on words that they would like to see included. And that has been used quite often throughout the last 1.5 years. Here are some examples which I find interesting because they show the problems that arise between when you try to do lexicography at the moment of emergence of words. And here are 2 nouns that denote, first of all, a person, Impfdrängler, that's a person trying to get a vaccination before it's their official turn, because in the beginning there was a I can't say that word, specific group of people were vaccinated before others due to medical reasons. So some had to wait, and then some were pushy and tried to get ahead of the queue because they felt the envy because other people already had the vaccination. And this feeling, the sentiment is called Impfneid in German. So we included these words into our list once they came up. But then when you look at the corpus evidence here, and this is a screenshot taken from Ovid Plus Live, you see that something happened in the second half of this year. The green line shows the Impfneid, that's the feeling of envy. And you see that the second word for Impfdrängler, the person trying to get their vaccine quicker, really comes after the feeling, because the feeling is there and then people try to get ahead of the cue. That's shown quite nicely in this frequency chart. But what you also see is that from July 2020 onwards, both words are not used anymore. And that's because we then had enough vaccination for everybody. There was no prioritization anymore, so we didn't feel envy. And so the words weren't used anymore, but they are already in the dictionary. So in the long run, we have to decide, are they worthy of being included after some time, or should we kick them out? Or are they interesting because of the cultural context? How do we deal with that? We don't know yet, but maybe we can discuss your ideas later. My second example is about new senses. This is the entry on 3G. Something that you know from a completely different context. 3G is transmittance that we use for our smartphones and things like that. We have a new meaning because in German, people who are either tested or vaccinated or recovered, all those words in German start with a G, are now denoted as belonging to the 3G group. And so we have this in here, and I think that's a good candidate on the long run for inclusion, because as you can see already, this element goes into compounds as well. And then there are those words that are not new at all, and coronavirus in German is one of those words. This frequency chart here shows that in our reference corpus, the word already comes up in the 1980s, isn't used anymore, then shows up again in 2003, then again not used very much, and of course now it's exploded. The times where it's been used before refer to the SARS or the MERS epidemic. And there is the problem for us that people want to see information on coronavirus because they feel it is new in our context right now, but it's not new at all. So we wouldn't consider it to be a neologism. And there's the problem for us. If we leave it out, then people will be frustrated. If we take it in, we go against our own rules, so to say. Let's give you some numbers so that you have an idea of what our list on the Corona vocabulary comprises at the moment. We are up to 2,000 entries now, and about 90% of them are lexemes, only 10% are phrases. And the bulk of the lexemes are nouns. That's typical for German. We have a strong tendency to have nouns, a very few new verbs and adjectives. Most people think that all those new words come from English. That's not true at all, as you can see by the numbers here. The majority really is just German word formation. And between those, compounds are the most common, as you can see here, but other types of word formation are used as well. There are lots of synonym clusters. For example, all those new words for mouth, nose coverage, or for protests against the corona measurements of the politicians, or the nouns or words denoting or referring to the time period before and after the corona pandemic, and so on. And this is, for us, it's interesting lexicographically, because usually we would take the most frequent word and that would become the entry in the dictionary, and then the lesser frequent synonyms would be part of that entry. But right now, we don't know yet which one of these words will be the winner in the end. They are all used pretty much the same now. So we have them all in our list. But after some time, we will probably be able to see which one is established better than the other one. And then we will change the system and have one entry and the others as part of that entry, probably. And this leads me to some of my conclusions. First of all, what do we do when we do lexicography at the moment of birth, like we try to do with our corona words? Well, we can respond very quickly to the vocabulary development, and then we make users happy that need to look up some information on these new words at the time being. But then the risk is that we have a dictionary full of short-lived neologisms, and then if you think about using this dictionary later on, people might wonder what kind of entries are in the dictionary. They might even be words that they don't know anymore. So you have to consider what to do after some time. then when you do it retrospectively, like we used to do, or we do with all the other new words, you have the risk that you don't offer information on new words at the time where they come up, and so where the needs of users is maybe highest. So you dissatisfy users if you make them wait 5 years to find some information on the lexeme. On the other hand, you don't have the risk to have all those short-lived words in your dictionary that you wouldn't probably include anyways. So what we do right now is we do both at the Neologismen Wörterbuch. For the Corona words, we do it at the moment of birth, or we try to be as closely to the language development as possible. And then the other words, we do our traditional way. And that's a bit confusing for users as well, I must be honest. So in the future, what do we do with those Corona neologisms? Do we include those that survive into our neologism dictionary, and then they would all be part of the 2020s decade, of course? Or do we possibly publish a separate dictionary like we did with a vocabulary emerging about the German reunification? That might be a possibility as well. We could then describe the whole of the Corona vocabulary in thematic groups, maybe, or according to the discount participants, something like that. And a specialty that I haven't mentioned so far is that German, of course, is not only spoken in Germany, but also in Austria, Switzerland, and other regions in Europe and outside of Europe. And in these regions or countries, specific things for Corona neologisms have emerged because, for example, Austria and Switzerland have different ways of going along with the pandemic. At the moment, we include everything that we find from Austria, Switzerland, Germany, wherever, into our word list. We then say this is specific for Switzerland or Austria, for example. We don't say this is specific for Germany, though, because we usually didn't do that in our dictionary, but I think we have to deal with that question of variety in the future better than we do at the moment. And these are my concluding thoughts, and lots of open questions. I hope it's not unfair of me to present you with all those problems, but I'm very happy to hear your thoughts on what I've presented. And this is where I say thank you yet again for your attention. And I'm glad to hear your questions now.